What's up guys, Asian here with the second video of the PTS patch notes for Greymoor, patch notes version 6.0.0. This one we're going to be talking about the skills that have been updated, including vampire and werewolf skills, as well as just sort of generic gameplay / combat changes that have been introduced as of Greymoor. There are two other videos. I decided to split up the PTS patch notes review into 3 separate videos based on what I wanted to discuss. First one is about Greymoor, all the changes that are in the Greymoor chapter. This one is about skills and combat in general. The third one is going to be about itemization changes that have been made to the various item sets in the base game. So for this one, we're going to be talking about skills. As always, links in the description below to the actual patch notes themselves if you guys want to read the full part of it. Now, they did include the vampire update on a separate post, so I'll be going over vampires first, and then we'll go over the combat and gameplay in a general section later. So vampires, this is your update. So much like Wolf Hunter was the update for werewolves, Greymoor is the update for vampires. So all of this stuff here is relatively important because it does impact how vampires work operationally and the mechanics behind vampirism. So we're going to quickly go over this. So the vampire quest has been updated to better teach you how to embrace your new vampire abilities. The tutorial aspects of the quest have been improved dramatically, and so you will have a better, there'll be basically to be a new tutorial, more or less. Encounters with vampire hunters are also something you may stumble upon in Tamriel, so just be wary if you're a vampire. Justice system has now been integrated with the vampire experience as well. Your most overt vampire actions and abilities are now criminal acts, much like a lot of necromancer abilities are considered criminal acts. At stage 4, most merchants and tradesmen will recognize your heavily corrupted appearance and will refuse to deal with you. The visuals for feeding have also been updated, and feeding now is also different as well. It will increase your vampire stage rather than decreasing it here. So if you want to get more powerful as a vampire, you will need to feed rather than just let it go on normally here. They've also obviously worked out some new abilities as well for vampires. So here we go. So obviously you get all your skill points refunded in the vampire lines if you are a vampire already. You have all been set to stage 1, and stages have been significantly refactored. Feeding now increases your vampire stage, and each stage lasts 4 hours, and once it expires, it decreases your vampire stage by 1. Obviously, you don't lose duration while you're logged out. Each vampire stage grants bonuses that decrease the cost of your vampire abilities and cause certain vampire passives to activate. But it also grants penalties that decrease your health regen, increase your damage taken from flame damage, and increases the cost of your non-vampire abilities. Now you have, moving on to the abilities here. They don't actually give us the actual values here, so you will need to jump onto the PTS to actually get these full values. Drained Essence has been removed from the game and has been replaced with Eviscerate, and if any ability has been removed, then all experience in that ability has been moved over to the appropriate new ability. Mist Form has been moved to the 5th skill in the skill line. It's now a toggle ability, draining your magicka every second it's toggle on. Now it is still a channel, so you can't use other abilities while you are in Mist Form. Elusive Mist just grants you major exhibition while you're in the form. Blood Mist now deals damage to enemies around you and heals you for the damage caused. Bat Swarm has been replaced with Bat Scion. Experience has been moved as appropriate. Eviscerate is a direct damage melee attack that deals more damage based on your own missing health. Blood for Blood costs health to use and increases the damage bonus based on your own missing health. Arterial Burst is the other morph, which will always be a critical strike if you use it while you're under half health. So this is sort of a vampire spamble, so to speak. I highly doubt it's going to replace any normal spamble, but who knows, we don't have exact values here. Blood Frenzy is a new skill, which is a permanent buff that can be toggled on or off outside of the global cooldown. While it's toggled on, you gain a bonus to weapon and spell damage, but your health is drained every second, and you can't be healed by other players. Simmering Frenzy increases the weapon and spell damage bonus, but also increases the health cost the longer it remains toggled on. Sated Fury, when it's toggled off, you heal for a portion of health you spent while it was toggled on. So this might be useful for Magicka Nightblades and Magicka Templars because your spambles also have a healing component. So for Magicka Nightblades, that's Swallow Soul. For Magicka Templars, that's Puncturing Sweeps. You might end up using this for those two classes to get a pretty big bonus to your weapon and spell damage. Now, of course, that does also come with the downsides of being a vampire, but you might be able to offset that a little bit. Vampiric Drain is a new skill. It's a short-channeled beam ability which deals low damage to an enemy but heals you for a significant amount of your missing health over time. Drain Vigor restores a portion of your missing stamina, and Exhilarating Drain generates ultimate over the channel. Mesmerize is a new crowd control ability which affects all enemies in a cone in front of you, stunning them if they are facing your direction. Hypnosis affects all enemies around you, and Stupefy snares enemies once the stun is over. So just a new CC ability, if you need a CC ability at all. Might be useful for tanks, but again, much like with Blood Frenzy, you're going to have to deal with the negative side effects of being a vampire. Blood Sign is a new ultimate, which is a transformation skill. Transforming instantly heals you to full health, and you get increased health, stamina, and magicka. You heal for a percentage of all damage caused, and you can see enemies through walls. Swarming Scion creates bats that swarm around you, dealing damage to enemies that come close. Perfect Scion, you ascend to Vampire Stage 5 while you transform, which grants all the benefits of Vampire Stage 4 with none of the drawbacks. Savage Feeding has been removed and replaced with Feed. This is a passive now. Supernatural Ability has been removed and replaced with Dark Stalker. Blood Ritual is the 4th passive now. Undeath is the 5th passive. It reduces damage taken by 15 to 30% based on each percentage of your missing health. Natural Resistance has been replaced with Undeath. Dark Stalker is the 2nd passive now. Decreases the time to enter crouch by 25/50% at all times and continues to allow you to ignore the movement speed penalty of Sneak. Feed is the 1st passive skill, which just allows you to feed on enemies and describes the bonuses and penalties of their vampire stages. Strike from the Shadows is the 3rd passive skill, which grants a short bonus to your spell and weapon damage after leaving Sneak, Invisibility, or Mist form. Unnatural Movement is the 6th passive ability, which reduces the cost of sprint and causes you to become invisible after continuously sprinting. So those are all the new vampire lines. Unfortunately, no real values here. You will have to jump on the PTS to get the actual values. But now, moving on to combat changes here. Again, we're just taking a look at skills and just generic combat changes here. So in general, synergies now have a hierarchy to determine which synergy appears first when multiple are present. Quest, dungeon, arena, and trial-related synergies are always going to appear over player source synergies, and then the hierarchy is as follows. Healing and shield-related synergies are first, utility buff debuffs are next, and then damage is last. So they gave you an example here. We have Purify, Conduit, and Combustion. Purify will appear first, then Combustion, then Conduit. So make sure you're spamming those synergy buttons, boys and girls. And they fixed a couple of issues here and there. They updated and optimized the logic of many player passives to reduce load on the server. There's a lot of things that are just sort of like reducing server strain here. More sort of updates here to server stuff. Pet basic attacks no longer remove players from stealth or invisibility. Only special AoE attacks require special activations will remove stealth. Pet summoning abilities now have a preventative window after completing their cast that prevents attempting to summon them again while they're already alive. Pets will now properly inherit their parents' bonuses related to armor, such as concentration or prodigy. So this was an issue for magicka necromancers in particular, where their blast bones weren't inheriting the armor bonuses, like the additional spell pen and so on. So now that has been fixed. And they fixed quite a few issues here. They reduced the damage of bashing by 80%. So bash weaving is no longer quite as necessary to get high levels of DPS. You can still obviously do it. It's still going to give you more DPS, but it's not going to be quite as potent as it used to be. Glyph of Bashing is now increasing damage of your bash attacks by up to 500 rather than increasing damage. Deadly Bash increases damage of bash attacks by certain amounts rather than increasing weapon and spell damage. So this is the Glyph and the one-handed shield passive respectively. And then they increased the healing reduction from Battle Spirit to 60% up from 50%, so a total of 20% reduction relatively speaking. Buffs and debuffs, they updated multiple abilities and item sets that granted the caster permanent, major, or minor buffs to make them work more consistently with other temporary sources. This is basically the kind of visual UI bug you would see on your combat sheet when you had things like Inner Light and Flames of Oblivion on the same bar. They basically cancel out and you wouldn't actually see the major buff. It should now fix itself here. Now, in terms of class abilities, not much, just a lot of issues that have been fixed here and there. So not really much to go over here. Again, a lot of these are just fixing issues here, so not really much to talk about here. So let's see here. Under the werewolf line, they updated a lot of the werewolf abilities here. It's called a pack. This passive now works with the direwolf summoned from the pack leader morph of your ultimate. Hurricane's Bounty now casting this ability while at full health restores stamina, and this ability gains major brutality while you have it slotted. Hurricane's Rage now grants major berserk when you cast it at full health, but also causes you to take additional damage. Hurricane's Fortitude now increases your health and stamina regen by a small percentage of the healing caused. Piercing Howl now deals 10% more damage to enemies who are facing you. Howl of Agony decreases the damage bonus of this morph to 25%, but it still works on enemies who are facing you. Pounce now becomes Carnage for 5 seconds after you cast it, which allows you to quickly rend your target, causing them to bleed for 10 seconds with an aggressive execute scaling bonus. Brutal Pounce, Carnage now overrides to Brutal Carnage, converting it into a conal attack. Each time the enemy is hit by Brutal Carnage, you gain additional weapon damage up to a maximum of 6 times. Feral Pounce, dealing damage with initial hit, or the override Feral Carnage, grants stamina in addition to extending the time you stay in werewolf form. Roar now causes enemies to become off balance for 7 seconds, and while slotted, you gain major savagery. Deafening Roar applies Minor Maim. Ferocious Roar increases your heavy attack speed by 33% for its duration. The pack leader morph no longer calls your direwolves to apply Minor Maim to enemies when they deal damage. Instead, while you're transformed, you gain 10% damage mitigation and passively grant you and other allies minor courage. Kind of still the tank morph, but not quite the tank morph. Moving on to other skills here, the fighter skilled, more issue fixes here and there. Barrier has now been increased the cost to 250 from 200, so a little bit harder to barrier spam now. And then they fix some more issues here with the champion system, a couple of the passives here and there. Then we move on to itemization, which is the next video. So overall, not many changes here when it comes to class abilities, just a lot of minor issue fixes here and there. Werewolves and vampires, you guys got quite a bit of rework overdone overall to your skill lines, which should make you guys a little bit more viable in PvE. Especially for vampires, there might be some cool synergies going on there with some of your active abilities, with some specific PvE sort of morphs and things like that. So overall, a couple of changes here to skills, but not that many, mostly just focusing in more on the vampire and werewolf changes here. Now, one other thing that has been, I don't think I saw it here. Let me see if I can find it if I search for it. Here it is. Pets can now inherit Bloodthirsty from your jewelry. So this should be a nerf to, or should be a buff, I should say, to Wardens and Necromancers. I also want to go over the Necromancer line. For Necromancers, your tether abilities, so Restoring Tether and Shock and Siphon, are on the global cooldown again, so you won't be able to use these off the global cooldown. That is a fairly big change here, so that does increase, I should say, it is a nerf overall to DPS for both Stamina Necromancers and Magic Necromancers, now that you have to use tethers on the global cooldown rather than just using them off the global cooldown instead. It is going to be a small nerf to Necromancers here because of that. But that's pretty much covers it for all of these skills. Like I mentioned, link in the description below to the full patch notes if you want to look at all the different issues that have been fixed. And also in the description will be links to the other 2 PTS videos taking a look at the Greymoor editions as well as the itemization changes that have been made. But that concludes this part of the PTS patch notes review. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.